I'm John Hill. I'm the evangelist for Techstars. Essentially, and I got to be careful with that name in the South, but I am a spokesperson for the company, an organization. I have one ground rule as a speaker. I'm highly interruptible. So, like at any point, if you have any questions, you want to slow me down, feel free. Like I'm originally from the East Coast. You're conversationally irrelevant if you don't talk fast. So I have a habit of speeding up as I go along. So if you need to slow me down at all, feel free. I love to make this as interactive as possible. Show of hands, how many of you actually know what Techstars is? Okay, let's flip it. How many have no idea what? Okay, perfect. So to put it kind of in a nutshell, and I'll go through a couple slides as well, but we're an early seed stage tech accelerator. So we look for companies that are 2, 3 people, founders, maybe a couple employees, that are showing some promise. So they're up and to the right? They're growing. They have the opportunity to generate revenue, and we invest in them pretty much before anybody else. Usually only investors around us are friends and family at that point. So we've now invested in 3,000 companies globally that way. We've had about shy of 400 acquisitions out of that. We've had 6 companies go public. Super interesting if you think about the fact that we see them when they're not too dissimilar to where students are building their companies now. So a lot of success. I've been with Techstars for 9 years. We like to say that every year at Techstars is like dog years, so I'm either close to death or retirement. Like angling for either at some point, I guess. But you know, what we do, I think, is what's fascinating. You know, we support people's dreams, and the people that were around, they have the audacity to suspend disbelief and do something that nobody else in the world has done, or do something that somebody else has done better. And when you hold that in your hands, when that's something that you're supporting, you tend to have an emotional connection to the journey of people. So I'm super fortunate to get to know a ton of our founders. I've sat down one-on-one with 1,600 of our companies. I just spoke to our accelerator in Austin. We have 50 accelerators now. Last year alone, we built or supported 600 companies, and like any of you who are starting companies, continue to lean into that as much as possible. It's a hell of a space to be in. It's a shadow labor force. Most people won't jump off the cliff. Organizations like this, people like Shelley, support systems like Texas A&M, they're set up to help you with a runway. You jump off that cliff, you're trying to build a plane before you hit the ground. It's up to us to kind of help you support and land that effectively, no matter what the outcome is. So I'm a big believer in really 2 philosophies. Build a network before you need it, so it's there when you do, and build a quality relational network, not a quantity relational network. Both of those were driven through experiences that I've had in time. So flashback to 2008. Some of you were in middle school, which kills me. And recession was starting to come into play in the US and global. I lived in the state of Michigan. I was director of alumni career services at Michigan State University. The automotive industry was literally driving off the cliff. Never seen anything like it before. 260,000 alumni for our university in the state of Michigan. I was beholden to supporting and helping all of them find jobs. So it was an office of one. Overnight, people were giving me calls saying, hey, I'm going to lose my house if you don't help me out. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to have to redefine my career. I'm going to lose my family. And you have to have an emotional connection to support and help people out like that. Within that chaos, by the way, the best innovation happens. And I think this is one of those chaotic moments in time. So your ability to build something out of this is just absolutely amazing. It may not look it now, but I promise you on the back end, it'll be incredible. But I leaned in to start helping all of those alumni, most of which had grown up in the automotive industry. What I learned is they only had made networks in automotive. They'd only developed their resume with an automotive lens in mind. So when the jobs disappeared there, they had to look elsewhere. They couldn't be in automotive, but they had to redefine themselves professionally. What they hadn't done is build networks outside of automotive. And so I had to help them figure out, how do I navigate other industries, other jobs to find those opportunities. So that's held with me for 13, 14 years. I continue to work with other companies on building out the networks they need before they need them. How many of you are entrepreneurs? Right? Your number one need is money. right? You need to start building the relationships with investors, the people who can support you out before you ask for money. If your first ask is for money, you failed, right? So it's a relational game, and that's how I learned it on the back end. So I got hired by a little company based on some of the work that I did in the state of Michigan. Some of you may have heard before. It's called LinkedIn. I was on a product team on LinkedIn. We were working in higher education. We built 5 products to reach 85 million people, so we were able to scale it a little bit. And while I was there, I had the good fortune of being kind of kitty corner to Reid Hoffman, who is the founder of LinkedIn. And he was writing a book, and he was doing research at the time. The book is called Startup Review. It's a great book. It's more based on how to find jobs through networks. But while he was researching that, he was looking at who are the most effective relationships you have, what are the most effective affiliations you have to move messaging from point A to point B, first level connection to a second level connection. And he actually defined the most effective quality relationships you have, and I'll go into that a little bit deeper in a second. But it really kind of honed in on, it's not about how many people you know, it's about the importance of the connections that they have to the people that they know, right? So it's not about quantity here, it's about quality here, because that quality will give you access to that second level. So, again, build a network before you need it, so it's there when you do. Build quality relationships, not quantity relationships. You're super fortunate. Texas A&M is one of the best affiliate networks as it relates to universities in the world. There isn't much like this, and I'll go into depth of what's available. How many of you did not go to A&M? All right, what universities? Just curious. Yeah, I know yours.
Benedictine University in Illinois.
All right, oh, that's interesting. High school?
Uh-huh.
High school?
Yeah.
Secondary school? We can go into that too.
Texas Tech.
Texas State?
Texas Tech.
Texas A?
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech. Yeah, your accent, like I can Patakan have it out in Boston out and we can battle back and forth.
Listen, I can do you perfect.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm a geographic mutt. So I was born in Boston, lived in Philly, Detroit, Nashville, San Francisco, Toronto, London. I can pick up any accent you want. But what I would love to do here is just give you a little scope and view of what Techstars is. You can ask me any questions you want. I'm super familiar with our process of connecting with companies and bringing them into our accelerators, like the application process. So I'm happy to talk through that if you want. You can do it on one-to-one basis after this. But I want to talk less about Techstars and showcase some of the walkthrough on LinkedIn that we train our companies on, so that all of you have something tactical you can walk away from here that can support and help any of your endeavors. And that's the established people in the room to those of you who are just exploring entrepreneurship. How many of you are like 3 months into starting a company? 5 months, 6 months, somewhere in there? How many of you started your company in the last year? You're essentially the solos here. All right. So, I'm at Techstars John on Twitter and Instagram. Feel free to connect with me in either of those spaces. My email address is john@techstars.com. I have like the most common name ever, but you can connect with me there. We started in 2006 in Boulder, Colorado, so not far away from Colorado State. And the idea was simple. If we surrounded early stage companies with the mentorship and investors they needed and did it from a programmatic perspective, could we accelerate their growth? And if we were doing that and setting that up, could we take some equity out of the companies that would supply the next generation of founders going through our process? Starting in 2007 with the first class, we've grown to today where we have 52 accelerators in 15 countries. We also acquired Up Global, which is Startup Week and Startup Weekend. Some of you may have heard of that before. It's like an entree point into entrepreneurship. We operate that in 177 countries. I can say without hesitation that we have the largest entrepreneurial network in the world. With our accelerators alone, we're sitting on 12,000 mentors that have mentored within our program. By the way, I always like to do kind of motivations of things like mentors, why they get involved and engaged in people like us. The 4 reasons that we see their altruism: they want to give back. They're interested in technological trends. If you're building a tech company, they want to see what you're doing because that gives them line of sight on 2 to 5 years from now. They're interested in their own opportunities, board work, advisory work, C-level positions at your company, and they're interested in qualified deal flow. So if they talk with you, get to know you, they'll decide whether to invest in you. The reason that's important, as you're talking with people who are mentors within this ecosystem or outside of it, it's important to understand the motivations, because you can lean into that and continue to keep them engaged and involved. We also have 23,000 investors that have invested in one of our companies. That's quite a bit. So pretty broad-based. What we do have grown and scaled quite a bit. 3,000 companies have gone through our accelerators to date, and we essentially break up into 3 areas. So this is Startup Week, Startup Weekend. We're on the community side. This is our accelerator startups. And to make it all happen, we generally partner with corporations to support what we do. Give you some idea of like longevity and the work that we've done in the past. We had a Disney accelerator working on entertainment technology in conjunction with Disney. One of the companies that came out of that was Sphero. Any of you seen Star Wars? So they were making a robot, cylindrical, that you could code through mobile interface, make move, whatever. Disney folks said, hey, can you put a head on that and make it the BB-8? And they did. It was the 3rd largest selling toy for Disney that year when the movie came out. That was one of our companies. So pretty cool. We had a partnership with Barclays, fintech that ran for 7 years, doing fintech in New York, Tel Aviv, Cape Town, South Africa, London. We've worked with things like RGA and hardware, Ford with automotive. So we've played in the space with a lot of the major brands that you can think of. We also have what are called city programs. So local investors within a marketplace get together and support and fund all of our companies that go through the program. To essentially pay the investment for those companies to scale through our efforts of structure. So I'm going to go into some of that in a bit, but I want to talk about some success stories, but I want to do it in a non-traditional way. And there's one on here that should be that is not, that I'm going to talk about. But how many of you use Uber? All right, you get a receipt on the back end. That receipt doesn't come from Uber. It comes from one of our companies called SendGrid. SendGrid is the first company to go public out of an accelerator. They were ours. Cool story. Transactionally, like as an investor VC, we like those wins. They were acquired by Twilio for $3 billion. So big number, right? DigitalOcean, one of our 6 companies to go public, raised $197 million. They're the 3rd largest cloud-based hosting service in the world between Rackspace, which is here, and Amazon. Here within Texas. So broad here. The one that's not on here that should be is PillPack, acquired by Amazon for $1 billion to become their online pharmacy. So again,
What was their name?
PillPack.
PillPack.
So we see them when they're small, and we get to watch that journey all the way to that point. I love like having the ability to have seen people go from idea to IPO. Right? I've been around long enough to actually witness it in some of the talks that I've done in programs to watch that play out. Now, I think the differentiation between us and a lot of accelerators is we're people first. And so we have a lens that we use to select companies into our accelerators where we look at team, product market fit. So it's all about the founders and then product market fit later. One of the things that happens to companies when they go through our process is they have to be highly adaptable and they have to be able to absorb critical feedback. Some people can't do that, and so they're not right for our system, even if the company is. Right? The other thing is, if you go founder first and create culture around that, not dissimilar to going to Texas A&M, if you go through one of our accelerators, it's like going to a university, it's applied education at a different level. You create emotional bonds with people, so you can start to tell these stories of transactional success into an emotional success story. So when I think of SendGrid, I actually think of Isaac Saldana, 14 years old, came over from Mexico to live with his aunt and uncle in Los Angeles. First generation university student, built a company that ended up being acquired for $3 billion. That's a good story. Isaac, Combined Island at this point, lives in OC, south of Los Angeles. Super shy, doesn't like getting in front of people, yet he's one of our biggest successes, so we put him in front of people all the time. And we convinced him in 2019 to get on a plane to fly out to Italy to share with the Italian entrepreneurial ecosystem his founder story, right? He does that because we have this thought process about this network that we all support and help each other out. We call it Give First. You could call it gift you give to your network, no expectation of receiving, pay it forward. There's a karmic value on that, but we've conditioned our network to help each other out as they go along. Being a founder is very isolating. It can be very taxing. It's hard to do, right? So that emotional connection plays out on all our success stories. PillPack, TJ and Elliott, 2 founders, they go through the acquisition process with Amazon. They host in their offices in Boston all the founders, mentors, investors in the ecosystem that help them along the way, talking about what it was like to go through an acquisition process with a company like Amazon. So it becomes knowledge that gets passed down to the next generation of entrepreneurs within that space. DigitalOcean, 2 Russian immigrants to the US, into New York, Moisey and Ben Uretsky. They actually applied to Techstars, I think 3 times, finally got in Boulder. They have the notoriety of being the only founders to get in a physical fist fight during a program. I don't advocate that for anybody. Please, don't use that as a pathway. But they rectified, they ended up reconciling and built a company that raised $197 million. What's fascinating about this is Moisey had a mental break as he was scaling the company. And his brother, Ben, their co-founder, Mitch, actually developed a plan to get him back into the company when he was ready. So he took a 6-month break, got to the place where he felt comfortable coming back in and got to ring the bell in New York. Right, cool story right there. So Moisey now owns a penthouse in Miami overlooking Biscayne Bay, maybe for tax purposes. And he races Grand Prix cars, no lie. He is one of the most unique people I've ever met in my life. He has now spoken at 30 of our programs, ripping off that bandage on the wound that he had when he was, took a mental break, again and again and again to support the next generation of entrepreneurs who come through our program. And so what kind of makes us unique, but I would say play this into whatever ecosystems people you're supporting and helping out. Don't make it transaction, make it emotional transaction. At the end of the day, we're trying to build businesses that scale, that's all of you as well. But you can be good purveyors of network and supportive relationships along the way. So I'm gonna skip out of the Techstars stuff. I'll jump back into some things in a bit. But if there were ever a price of admission for something that was worth it, it's gonna be the next 20 minutes or so. I'm the former product walkthrough specialist at LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a super fascinating platform. 850 million people on it. Vast majority of people are on it, but not on strategically. That includes all of you. There is a reason for that. LinkedIn's UI UX sucks. And then somehow through time and OKRs, they've made it suckier. So they hide most of the best value on the platform. They make it super hard to figure out how to navigate this. I'm gonna make it easy. So I was paid to put walking through on this into easy grasp for anybody. So I'm gonna go step by step on a process. Anybody not on LinkedIn? I don't run into that anymore. So the first presentation that I gave on LinkedIn was in 2006. So I've been doing this for a while. And then LinkedIn essentially benefited for 5 years for me doing it for free until they paid me and kind of hired me on board. But one of the things that I want to show you that's kind of cool here is if you go to my network, which would be your network, if you go to connections, hey Everett, if you go into manage synced and imported contacts, you can actually export all of your first level connections out of LinkedIn. So what will happen, there'll be a little radio button that I can connect to, this download archive, and I can request that. It'll send me an email, a CSV file of all my first level connections, names, title, company, industry, all email, so any communication that we've had on platform will come out of there. CSV file is fancy term for Excel, and then you can upload it to any customer relations management tool, CRM you're using. So there's portability on the relationships here. That's huge. And why that's important for all of you, and this is the stuff that I go over our companies with, is you can do a relational SWOT. So you can start to see where you're strong on relationships, sort by job type, by company, stuff like that, and where you're weak. And so you can then create strategies to go after where you're weak or hire into where you're weak to help your product and service in the development of it. Now, those who own companies, how many of you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people working with you? Right? If you all downloaded your connections, put it into one file, deduped it, you have every relationship emanating out of your organization right now. right? Super powerful, you can tie it to each person. Now, again, you could do a relational swap from an aggregate perspective. Even more powerful, if you're trying to reach people outside of this community, say like Europe, terms of service on LinkedIn is implied communication on and off platform. So if you go onto a public profile, their email address is on there, which means that you can send out messaging to all your first level connections without like disrupting GDPR, which is a mailing issue in Europe where you have to get permission first. You already have permission because LinkedIn set it up. Pretty cool, right? So this is like a first step. Like, how do you not use this? By the way, one thing that's absent here are the emails within the download. But again, on all your public profiles, first level connections, you just copy and paste if you want. You have them, and you can communicate however you want. So I'm going to pop back into LinkedIn. Talk about universal search for a second. It's kind of useless. It's too broad-based right now. I like the old search better. It used to be bucketed. You remember, like, you'd hover over it. It was people, jobs, companies, groups. That was like 2.5 years ago and beyond. That still exists. It's just a little bit hidden. So if you go into My Network, if you go into Connections, if you go into search with filters, it all still exists here. So if I pop over to this part, people, jobs, companies, groups are there, and I can select information on those categories. I want to stop here for a second. So these are all my first level connections, and I want to talk about what I was saying with the quality relationships, not the quantity relationships, based on what Reed was doing on research of his book. Fascinating aside, his co-partner, co-writer on his book, this guy by the name of Ben Casnoka, Ben was actually an associate, so he's working part-time at our first accelerator in 2007 in Boulder. So like, it's an interesting intersection for me because I know both Ben and Reed, and I worked at both LinkedIn and Techstars. But when Reed was studying Startup of You, he was looking at how people get jobs through relationships. And what he found was 85% of jobs through relational networking happen about not who you know, direct connection, first level connection, but who they know, second level connection. So for all of you, it's like your business development, your sales, your investment opportunities. It's not about who you know, it's about who they know that creates the opportunity, right? We'll go a little bit deeper into that in a second. But he also was able to qualify the most effective affiliations that you have that move messaging from A to B. The most effective relational network you have is friends and family. The challenge with friends and family is a lot of times their network isn't big enough to help you out or aligned with what you do. So I'm an evangelist. I was a network catalyst before this. I was an evangelist before that. My family doesn't even understand my job titles, let alone how to help me out. So I had to go to the second affiliation, which was university affiliation. They found student alumni, student alumni back to institution, super powerful, which is why they built an initiative around universities that I worked on. Third was shared work experience. How many of you worked before? Rhetorical question, please don't raise your hand. That's super scary. Fourth was anything that you do around personal and professional causes to support yourself. So this could be board work, advisory work, student groups, community groups, things like Startup Grind, right? These associations, now if I run those, that affiliation goes up because I'm more invested in it. If I'm loose and only show up once in a while, it's less impactful and effective. Those were the 4 main affiliations that we developed. So if you use that lens and think about that and building out your network and do it on a intentional way, you can start to see how this first and second level connection pays off. So this is my universe, direct connection, indirect connection, 85% of job opportunities. I can reach 1.5 million people. Now, that seems like a lot, and that 12,000 connections that I have seems like a lot. I was a spokesperson for LinkedIn, which is the largest professional network in the world. I was a spokesperson for, in essence, Michigan State University, which is not far behind Texas A&M on alumni size. And I'm a spokesperson for the largest entrepreneurial network in the world. I could have 100,000 connections easy. So I'm actually really specific about who I connect with because I'm trying to help our founders with quality relationships to connect from A to B. Now, for my founders here, what's your primary need? What do you need more than anything?
Money,
Money. Who has money?
investors.
Right. So this, I'm going to do 3 stages. I'm going to show you how to get investors out of a general network, categorically, how you can do it with search terms, and then how you can do it through the university. So out of this, if you tell me you don't have leads for investors, I'm going to tell you that's not true. You definitely do. All right, so I could start with looking at industry as a categorization here. If I scroll down into industry, this is the old SIC codes, so NAICS codes. Essentially, it's government designation by industry category for tax purposes used globally. So everybody in the world uses like this categorization. If I type in here, these are people who are actually in the space building companies as VC. And there's a reason I'm telling you it that way. But now I can see the 82,000 people I'm connected to that are in VC at a direct or indirect level, first or second level. By the way, when all of you do this search and replicate this, you're going to have bigger numbers than you expected, right? Because you have a broader network at that second level. Now, that's too many for me to go through still. So, for instance, I was just in Austin. I can now look at all the people in Austin that are first or second level, 616. What kind of companies are you building? Talk about one of your startups. Huh?
Tech.
What kind of tech company do you want to build? Or already building?
I say Web3 something.
So Web3?
Yeah.
All right. So I want to find, I don't want to go through 600 investors, right? So I can search this set with something like Web3. And now I have the two people, Web3, that are in my network, first or second level connection in Austin, right? So I've filtered this at a level that can help a very esoteric term, right? Maybe their thesis for investment. They're in my network, first or second level. I know they're in venture, right? And they're in a city that I'm going to be in 3 hours. Yeah. So think about what I just did. I took 850 million people at a level that can help me out, leveraging network. And all I'm trying to do here is take a cold call into a warm call. Make it as easy as possible for me to connect with the right people to support what I'm doing, right? So all of you can do this in cities around the world. And I can broaden it out, take Austin out, and see how many people apply to Web3 for myself. So I delete this. And I've got 408 investors that I can create a lead list with to support my company doing things around Web3. Cool?
That's excellent. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So now I want to talk about limitations of some of this search, and we're going to go into some other ways that you can play around with this. Again, categorical based on government categories, they're umbrellas. So I can work at Google, I can work at Amazon, I can work at one of the oil companies around here and invest in companies. I don't show up in this because I show up in those other categories, right? Information technology, oil and gas, whatever. So what I can do to kind of play around that is I'm going to reset all the filters. I'll go back to first and second level connection. Take out Web3. I want to look at my universe, right? And then I can start to do search terms that represent the people that I'm after. So if I'm after angels, I have 24,000 angels that are associated with what I'm doing. Earlier today, I talked to a company within this market that was doing connective work. So they're essentially playing in IoT. So you saw the search come up on that. So now I can do this as a Boolean search. So I can put plus, I can do things like IoT separate. And I have the 125 people that are angel investors in IoT that are in my network in a first or second level connection. Right? I just gave you a second layer of going after investors. So my Texas A&M people, raise your hand. How many of you know all the investors related to Texas A&M? Probably, actually. But I'm going to show you how you can get that, right? So while I was at LinkedIn, I was, as I told you before, on the university team. We built a series of pages connecting longitudinal career data to university attendance, which allowed us to filter out a ton of information based on people who came from here. We're in campus and now we're gone, right? Or around this ecosystem. So if I select this, it comes to the university page itself, and we're going to pick on this right here. So I've been speaking in front of universities for about 15 years about how to use this to connect with alumni and engage them for time, talent, and treasure. our developers used to, at LinkedIn, follow me around to those talks. So they built this after the talks I used to give. They affectionately call it John Hill in a box. So this is my baby. It's funny because it's still around 10 years later. But if you click on it, you can see all the alumni from a university like Texas A&M that have a profile on LinkedIn, 446,000 people, by where they work, where they live, what they do, what they're skilled at, what they studied, and how you're connected. So again, we talked about venture. Who are all the people at A&M that might be able to help me out with funding on my company? If I type in venture capital, do a search, I can see 737 alumni that are associated with venture capital that went to Texas A&M. Now I can take a step further, say go to a hyper-economic zone like San Francisco. I do a search there. I have the 47 alumni that are in venture that live in San Francisco that went to Texas A&M, and I can see how I relate to each one of them. Jag actually went to MBA program with my sister, who's now in M&A at Jones Lang LaSalle. And she invested in his company, and he's a Techstars company. So that's where it gets a little weird. But anyway, lots of cross connections there, right? I can certainly ask Jag to connect me to Nick. And how we work with our companies on that is doing forward emails. So playing off that affiliation to create a hook so that you can have conversation with somebody. Before I get much further on that, I want to play off that how impactful university affiliation is, and this is for all of you. So think about secondary school, high school, think about the colleges that you went to, right? If a student from any of those spaces were to reach out to you and say, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about who you are and what you're about, how you got into the place you're at now, they show hands how many of you would take that call. And if you don't raise your hand, you're going to hell. And I don't have that power, and I'm Irish Catholic, so I'm going to feel guilty about that for the next 24 hours. But the point is, all of you raise your hand, right? You know? And that's what you're tapping into here. So one of the things that we found is about a third of the time, 1 in 3 times, university connections complete from first level to the second level, right? So it's formulaic. So if I have, I don't remember what the number was, 40-something people in San Francisco from Texas A&M, and reach out to all of them, I can expect to get, I'm not a math major, 15 people, right? 15, 16 people. Pretty cool, right? So all of you can follow suit on some of the learnings that we're giving to all of our people. Now, I go back to, I know Jag well, I actually know Janelle really well, I actually know all these people well. Steve is the former VP of HR for LinkedIn. He now has written books. The latest one was called Workquake, so it's like what the next generation of the workforce looks like. Super smart guy. I could play off Steve to connect into Seth, and what I would personally do is call him. But if I were to write a forward email to him, I would tell Steve, hey, I'd really like to connect into Seth. This is what I'm looking for, some ideas and thoughts to support and help me out. One of the biggest arrows you have in your quiver is asking for advice. Advice is a conversation extender. People like to get advice, it's light, and once they do, they're invested in you in some way, shape, or form, which downstream allows you to ask for broader and bigger things. One of the things that I see our companies mess up on is they ask for money or they ask for a deal or a partnership right out the gate. It's not how this works. You need to take a little time to develop and support how through this go. Just an aside, because I was thinking about this. What's the most effective way to communicate with somebody?
In person.
Absolutely, face-to-face. What's the second most effective way to communicate with somebody? Phone, I'll give you Zoom, Hangout, stuff like that. What's the least effective way to communicate with somebody? Yeah, or LinkedIn email, it's like 11 right? Don't rely on technology as your primary way to build relationships. Try to get everybody in those first 2 buckets. Face-to-face, phone, right? So I use a lot of this to actually pick up. I have the cell phone numbers. I know Steve, Janelle, and Jag I have my phone right now. So, it would be funny to actually get Steve on the phone and start talking to you based on this topic. All right, so what's your second need after funding?
Talent.
Absolutely. You get money, you need to spend that money on finding people who can build more, right? Talent. COVID is a super interesting thing, slice of life. When you talk to a bunch of companies, and as I told you, I've sat one-on-one with 1,600 of our companies, you see some pattern matching on how they scale. So
pattern
matching. So pre pre-COVID, I cough at that moment. Pre-COVID, our company's built in two different ways. About 5% of them, and that's not an exact number, but gives you an idea, was less. Built intentionally distributed. So they found the best talent around the world, didn't care about location. About 95% of them, most of them, built in their backyard. So if I were building a company in Bryan or College Station or whatever, I would attract talent from here. And it was generally out of network, like in network. So it was a direct connection, first level connection, people I know or people they know, which I recruited at the beginning. That happens till about 25 hires, and then after that you hire somebody in HR, especially in tech, and then they broaden out the funnel for where you get talent. COVID has changed that pretty dramatically. The distributed and the backyard have combined into one. So I'm still attracting talent in my backyard, but I'm not afraid to get talent from, where I'm from, Boston or San Francisco or London or whatever, right? So there are advantages to taking both paths, but I want to show you some of the talent that's available here and some ways you can mobilize it and turn that approach of being passive through network, first and second level connections, connecting them to their jobs, and become headhunters, like actively go after the talent you want. So name a position that you might be hiring in your company. Any of you hiring engineers or want to hire engineers?
Software developer.
Software?
No, hydraulic engineer.
There we go. All right, so hydraulic?
Yeah.
All right, so are there particular universities that turn out hydraulic engineers more than others?
Sure.
Do you know any of them?
Does. This university does.
Outside of this one, so we'll be able to play in this space, but I'm curious if there are some that are good that are away from Texas.
Probably Auburn.
Auburn?
Yeah.
Perfect. So, two ways I can look at it, right? So if I go back to that alumni tool, so I'm looking for a hydraulics engineer. I don't even know what that is, so it's super awesome.
We do ground robots. So.
Ground robots?
Yeah, big
Now I'm even more fascinated. So, what would hydraulic engineering come out of for a program? Is there a major for it specifically here?
Need mechanical.
Probably,
mechanical.
Mechanical? All right. So I can do what they studied, right? And mechanical's high here, 17,000, right? I could go into what they're skilled at. Hydraulics would be good. Any of those?
Yeah, hydraulic systems.
All right. So now I have the engineers. Now I'm recruiting out of my backyard. So I just want those that, I think you're getting grouped into Greater Houston. Is that right? All right. So the people in my backyard, right? I have 203. So say they've changed the curriculum and they've become more advanced on the technology they're applying in the last 3 or 4 years, and you want somebody who's in that time period. I can now look at those people who just graduated in the last 2 years, right? And I could look for people who have specific keywords on their profile. So entrepreneur might be one of them. Fat fingers. So nobody on the entrepreneur, but I could play with those terms. So I could do founder startup. But again, I can see the people who connect with them. And it's actually one of our founders here, right, that associate with some of these people. And I can reach out now through network, and you're gonna be way more networked here than I am. But I can now use this to connect into that with talent, right? Identify them through this. How long did it take me to do that? Right? So I could do this when I'm sourcing talent once a week. Just make it formulaic, wake up in my coffee, look for a few people, reach out to them. Now if I reach out to one of these people, there are 3 things they can do. 1, absolutely nothing. No interest, don't respond, whatever. Does that hurt you at all? No. Right? 2, they're interested. You just qualified a lead that took a minute to do. Right? And you can see what their skill sets are. And obviously you're going to take it through a process from there. But 3, reach out to them. They're not interested, but they're open to sharing with their network. Who are they networked with? Other engineers that are in hydraulics, right? So now Auburn, and that feels like the more difficult one, right? It's easier to get talent here because it understands the area. It's harder to attract it in. So if you're not like a hyper-economic zone like San Francisco, the rest of the world has a struggle bringing that talent that they need that's specific into a market. So what I want is people who are affiliated with the market are already here, right? So if I go up to Auburn, and you know probably the top 10 universities that are associated with hydraulics engineering, are be pretty easy to figure out. I can go into alumni,
And I can start with those people who live in the greater Houston area or whatever they're attaching you to. So these are the graduates there. And then again, I can do hydraulics. And again, I can do what they studied, mechanical engineering. And from that school, here are the 4 people that represent that. And I'm not networked in, and I'm not in space, right? But you can now see the talent coming outside of this region that is here, right?
That's cool.
You can do that in general search too. I just like the ease of use on this. And I go back to like most important communication, face-to-face, phone-to-phone. This is a great database of information. Get it out of here, right? Use the information for the warm call, but take it out of this system to communicate with people. All right, what's the third need you have? I got money, I got talent.
Time, find me some time in there.
You need customers, right? I can't do anything on time. I'm actually adding to your time. So
So you need
you,
customers.
you need customers, right? Name a company you're trying to sell into. You can make it up if you want.
Nitro PDF.
Is that real? What, is it Nitro?
Nitro, all one word. Nitro, N-I-T-R-O PDF. They have about 200-300 people.
Nitro PEF?
PDF. Papa
PDF.
Delta Foxtrot.
Okay. So military?
Nope.
No, you.
Oh, no.
No. All right. So I could go back to say, and you went to Texas State, right? Or Texas
Texas.
Tech. So I could look at Texas Tech, right? And I'm always looking for education or university. They've made it a little clunky sometimes, so like make sure you find this page. But I could look at where they work, and I could add Nitro
Papa Delta Foxtrot.
PDF. It must have another name, or it must not be one word. There we go.
There we go. Nitro PDF.
So there's nobody there. All right, from your university,
Yeah.
right? So there are different ways I can do this. You're going to run into walls when you're looking through relationships and navigating this. So I want to look at not the university page. Man, their search is interesting. They must have another name.
No, they do. Go back. Sam was on your previous page.
Is it Nitro Inc.?
No.
No.
Go back. If you can't go back to the previous page. You're second connected with Sam. Sam won't answer my phone calls.
So that was, I did just the general search on those people, right? Sam. So let's see. So it's just Nitro. So that was it, Nitro Inc.
Okay, Nitro.
All right. So Brad Feld, who started Techstars, right? The reason I'm here talking right now
Yeah.
is connected to Sam.
Oh, there we go.
So if I come into Nitro, I'm going to go into their company page, and you can do it off profile here, right? So there's and you're right, 353 employees. So I'm going to give you some ideas of how I would use this. So Nitro is trying to recruit talent for itself off this page. There are super good insights for me that I could use back at them. So if I go to Life, they actually paid for this button. So they're using this to recruit talent. So if I connect into that, they've got a series of videos and testimonials from people, right? And if you watch those, if you read them, they're telling the words that mean something to them because they're trying to sell people on their culture, right? Their values. So if you're pitching Nitro, use these words back at them. They're telling you how to speak their language. Use it in your pitch of product or service back at them, right? Now, if they don't have this Life button, if you go to a job description, the first top of the job description will have that as well, right? So you can take their words and use them back at them. Nitro PDF's a small company, right? If I sell into them, so I'm a startup, it's hard to pattern match on SMBs, small and mid-sized businesses,
Sure.
right? So I need to generate a lead list for sales, sell into Nitro PDF. If I come back to this home page, I can actually see the 10 companies that are most similar based on user patterns. So it's telling me who else I can sell into, right? So it becomes my lead list for sales. This isn't working exactly because of what they do. They're playing with some of the big boys,
Yeah.
right? But it'll work for you as you're selling some of your stuff into the companies you're looking at. Now, one of the super cool things about this is if I scroll back here, when you build something at Amazon, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, your expectation is when you leave, they'll road grade over it. Because the next generation of people come in and they're all super smart and they're all trying to iterate on a product. Right? So John Hollenbach's on university pages being around for 10 years is like historic. Right? 2 years ago, they had added it to every company page. So if I come here, I can see all the people who work at Nitro, by where they live, where they studied, what they do, what they're skilled at, and what they studied. So I can start to create an archetype with customers that would buy my product or that I need to pitch to, and do the searches on here to find the skill sets, to find, the affiliations, the commonality we have, and sell them to them through awareness, through relationships. Pretty cool? All right, I'm gonna touch on a couple more things. I'm gonna jump out of this for now.
Hey, before you jump out, can you
Yeah.
go back to the A&M page?
The which one?
Please, the A&M page,
Yep.
Texas A&M. Who's that one person that was hired? Is it Chris Curran? I knew
Yep. So you obviously know Chris.
Took a class with him.
Go ahead, bud.
Yeah.
So one other question. So LinkedIn has several sets of subscriptions.
Yes.
Do you use or recommend the subscription level?
Yeah, you kind of have to do it now. Post Microsoft acquisition, they made the freemium less valuable. So before that, you used to have unlimited search. You had the ability to navigate the system super easily. They've restricted most of that and views the data. So at the minimum, you need the job seeker account, and I think it's $35 a month or something like that. And I know that's steep for some people, but if you're trying to build something and navigate the relationships here in the way that I just showed, it's like the minimum threshold. I'm a big believer of watering your network, and you saw that I have a large network, so you can't do that just in your head. You have to actually become systematic on how you approach supportive relationships. So one of the things I did, and I didn't do it yesterday, but I did it the day before, I'll go through things like notifications. I'll look through other social and see people who are doing things changing in their life, have changes in their life. So are they taking a new job? Are they moving from one location to another? Are they celebrating something that's pretty big for them professionally? So about 20 times a day, if somebody moves to a company, and I know people at that company, I'll introduce them. If somebody's moved from one city, country, and I see, I know other people there, I'll introduce them. If somebody's celebrating something, I don't hit the like button or whatever, I'll send them a direct message outside of the platform, just saying, hey, super awesome, right? If I can do it by text, I'll do it that way, email, whatever. I do that 20 times a day. I do it every day, Monday through Friday. Again, I failed yesterday, but I'm usually pretty good. 100 times a week, I'm celebrating somebody's professional accomplishments, 5,000 times a year. I have 12,000 connections, so I'm hitting almost half of them on that formulaic approach. I did do this today several times, actually in our little break, Shelley, when I was at the hotel, I did 3 or 4 times. I'll send people notes saying I'm thinking of you. Texas A&M, being back at university, reminded me of certain people, so I just shot them notes, right? I'll do that another 2,500, 3,000 times a year. At the end of every year, I write 100 handwritten notes to people who impacted and affected my life professionally the year before. Talk about how we can work together in the future. I've been doing that for 15 years. You want to cut through clutter, handwritten notes are gold. And, it's the simple things. It's the basics, but a lot of people ignore it. And by the way, thank you notes, you're going to get one, obviously, right? Thank you notes, huge. Just the little things of courtesy to stay engaged and connected. Now, if I ask any of those people to help and support any of the companies that I'm working with, do you think they're likely to take the introduction? Of course. More likely? Yeah, probably. Right? And it's not why I do it. It's more intuitive. Huh?
If it was a good note.
If it's a bad note, they ignore me totally, right?
What if your handwriting is encrypted?
Well, so that's one of the great things is I can write whatever I want and they never know what it is because my handwriting's horrible, but they still get a note and they can see my name. So second is there's virality through updates on platforms like LinkedIn. So I'm a big believer of short form blogging. If you're in this space, it's super hard to do long form prose and stuff like that about all the things you've learned around entrepreneurship and stuff like that. Not many people can juggle that, but you can do status updates. The reason I bring that up is LinkedIn has pretty incredible reach. Is this going to pop back on when I? it has pretty incredible reach.
Something died. Maybe it's coming
I
back.
think, let's
There
see,
we go.
it should pop back on. So, if I go back to my profile and I go down to, and again, this is on the next level up on view, so I need like job seeker or whatever. But I can look at some of the posts I've made. So for instance, I was just talking about the different markets that I've been to schools that I reference here as well. And I can look at, like this post that took me 15 seconds to do has reached 4,400. I just had one that reached 125,000 people, right? And it took me 10 minutes to do, 10 seconds to do, right? And then when I go on here, I can see, am I aligned with the content, right? Are the right people reading my information? So if you work in an accelerator, you're investing in early seed stage tech companies, who should be looking at your profile and your content? Founders, right? And then on the back end, we're looking for acquisition. You need the relationships with the right people that support and help you out. Who should be reading my content on that side? Companies like LinkedIn, Google, Amazon, GM, that buy these companies, right? So for me, I can see I'm content aligned based on content. And again, you don't have to go crazy. There's a formula called Cope, create once, publish everywhere. People want to share your journey, by the way. The vast majority of people will never be entrepreneurs. So give them an opportunity to go along for the ride. Take that time to write some things, create actions in it if you want, and then see if you're aligned with the audience you're trying to reach through the content you're putting out there. I'll grab you in just 1 second. Who's viewed your profile? Most voyeuristic thing on LinkedIn, I looked at it like 7 times during this presentation. No, I'm just kidding, I didn't. But if you pitch product and service to somebody and they look at your profile after you leave, what does it tell you? They're interested, they wouldn't look otherwise, right? And it's not an absolute, not everybody's gonna do it, but it's a good signal for you. Now, if you see somebody at that company that you pitched to who was not in that meeting, looked at your profile after a meeting, what does that tell you? And they're very interested, or you failed spectacularly and they're talking about you internally, right? That it could be A or B, right? But all I'm trying to do is give you a framework for how we're helping people navigate relationships in the work that we're doing. I have a few resources for you. One that's on a QR code, so if you want to pop your phones out, you can take that. Give you some of the tools we have. You had a question, but I didn't mean to ignore you.
Yeah, this is all helpful. Please keep going. But who is using LinkedIn like this, and what companies are using those intelligent recruiting methods to try to get people?
So by the way, there's a reason that I was their evangelist,
Yeah.
right? So not many people are using it this way. LinkedIn's not great at sharing marketing walkthrough. Like it's a good example of an engineering heavy company that loves to continue to engineer, but hasn't figured out how to actually help people through the process, which is why I was there for the years that I was. But you can see like the utility is off the charts if turned on the right way, right? It's a car that most people don't even know how to start. And like when I look at it, all I see is gold. And one of the reasons I continue to do this with entrepreneurs, and I'll probably do this when I'm retired and continue to go this direction, is because most people haven't helped people see relationships this way. And this is how it all works. And you can talk to some of the established entrepreneurs in this room. Most of what they've been able to develop was through relationships, right? I'm just giving you a way to view it in a little more subtle, different way. So if you're interested in applying stuff like that, all this stuff will be on this QR code, but you can also go to our website. There's a whole host of information here. So we try to educate people as well. So you can apply here, but we'll actually go through the steps of what it's like to go through the accelerator in the eyes of our founders. So it'll give you like their insights. If you run across people at Techstars, reach out to them. Tell them, hey, I'm interested, love to have a conversation. We definitely don't mind that vetting. And our founders would be interested in talking and connecting with you. Like they want to share the insights. We're imperfect. There are things we do really well and things we don't do well. But we're willing to put it all out there, right? So, and if you don't want to start your own company, but you're interested in potentially working with one, this is actually one of our portfolio companies. So this is actually something you should think about in this ecosystem. The company's called Getro. They scrape off all the jobs from our startups off their website and aggregate them in one place. So we currently have 6,800 jobs at our 2,500 companies that are listing them on their website. Right now, this is slice of life, so this will change tomorrow, the next day. And you can go through and search, all over the world for the jobs that you might want in this space. But you can do it by ecosystem. We just have to do a portfolio doing it. So we kind of cool that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anybody do it in that specific geography yet. And then last thing, we took all of our learnings and accelerators and created the Entrepreneur's Toolkit. So all of you can go through a video walkthrough on how to build a company. It's free, it's our best learnings, it's everything that we have. It's super good. The guy who did it actually came out of design learning and was one of our MDs for a program, so that he can speak from both sides of the fence. I always love supporting and helping people out. If there's anything I can do long-term, don't hesitate to ask. And I go back to what I was saying before, simple things to take away from this. Build a network before you need it, so it's there when you do. Build a quality relational network, not quantity relational network. And the most important thing on all of this, and it's why you get on a plane and go from market to market to market, is continue to dream big. There are a ton of helpers out there that want to support and move you forward. Kaufman just released in 2021, when they look at health entrepreneurship in the country, a report that said there are only 360 new companies starting per every 100,000 people. So if you're leaning into this and doing this, you are already a unicorn. And we'd love to make you actually a unicorn. So, know that that's on the horizon. But I appreciate it. I will be back in this market at some point. I don't have any doubt about that. This was almost at 200 universities I've spoken at. Irony is this wasn't one of them to date. So Shelley, thank you. Give her a round of applause. She deserves it. And I wish you all luck. So thank you for paying attention for a little bit. Hopefully that was helpful.
Appreciate it. Thank you.